party, Tim Hart, who we met through the Ron Paul campaign, who Bill said that came on board as secretary, and Bill Bradley continues as our treasurer. And in terms of something that we've been trying in Southwest Michigan, we have a business meeting at a local restaurant, and then we actually move. We drive a couple miles to Benton Harbor, and we have a roundtable discussion every month, and it's at a local bar, and we've had a really interesting turnout as far as different people that will come to the Ferndale podcast information. So that's about it.
Who's going to speak for Washington?
I don't know, but I just want to make
Larry?
sure you're in there.
I think I will. In Washington County, we actually made very good use of the strategy of having the convention a little later to pick open races, which is how Tom and I got ourselves elected. We ran only a few handful of writing candidates. That went very well. We have recently revised our bylaws.
Bob, and who actually worked with Bob at the radio network. I happen to think Bob Barr is a fine fellow to have a drink with and to smoke a cigar with. But in my opinion, he didn't have a goddamn bit of business being this party's presidential nominee. The fact is that when Bob Barr actually had a vote in Congress, he was one of the least libertarian Republicans in the place. He voted for the Patriot Act. Something I experienced firsthand, by the way, when I abandoned my media role for a while and went to the aid of a scientist in Washington, D.C. named Stephen Hatfield, who was wrongfully accused of being the anthrax killer. And I worked pro bono for Steve and his lawyers for 5 years to help clear his name, and was subjected during that time to FBI harassment of the absolute worst order. I done what the Patriot Act's all about, folks. My home was burglarized 3 times in sneak and peek searches by the FBI. I had FBI agents following me around the block anywhere in Washington. I went for months at times. Bob Barr voted for that law. He voted for the Defense of Marriage Act and promoted that when he was in Congress. I don't know about you. I personally feel that gay people have every right to marry, just the same as any heterosexual person does. It shouldn't be the government's business to tell us who we can love and who we can marry. And beyond that, by God, I think every gay person has a right to be just as miserable as the rest of us. Most of the major newspapers in outstate Michigan, those newspapers maintain a 20-person bureau in Lansing, covers state government. You know how many reporters they have in Lansing now following the cutbacks? 1. Wow. For 20 to 1. Not a single television station in this state, with possible exception of WILX, where Tim Stubing works. Not a single television station in this state maintains a Lansing bureau for a full-time Lansing correspondent. It's not there. When I was a kid growing up in Flint back in the 60s, every one of the Detroit TV stations, every one of the Grand Rapids TV stations had a full-time person in Lansing. That's gone now. So there's nobody here keeping close tabs at all as to what's going on in state government. Why do you think things have gone to hell in a handbasket in this state, folks? It's partly because you don't have enough eyeballs watching what the politicians here are doing to communicate that information to the public. The public here is increasingly in the dark about what its local and its state government is doing.
I'm still going to be involved. Did you want to do the drawing?
No, I want you to speak on your award real quick. My drawing can wait.
I'm all finished.
Oh, you are?
Okay, who is our impartial person who's going to draw?
Well, we were told to do
Yeah.
You ready? How many are we going to draw? We're going to draw 1.
This is 1 for everything, and how much did they win?
Would you like me to pull on here?
You haven't done that yet?
I have not. I thought we were drawing it 4. You can do it now.
Well, it is.
Yeah, I got one more.
All right. That's a lot.
That's a winning line.
It's half a, they can roll up his sleeves before he...
There we go.
Ready?
Because you pay for all those things. You keep the value of our dollar high. Because if you don't, it's going to hurt your exports. And so they were willing, the Japanese and the Chinese were willing to step in and buy the bonds and buy the dollars. Under Bretton Woods. We were the reserve currency. We were able to export. I'm saying what? I'm saying this. Okay? Now look, I know a lot of you want to ask me questions. When I'm done with this, I'll be glad to open it up, and you can ask me anything you want. All right? What I'm saying to you is this, is that there's going to be an opportunity. We may not be successful, but the opportunity is going to be there. And I will give you, and I'll open it up for questions after that. I will give you a few things that I think you ought to do. One is, I think we've reached the point where the system may jam. And the first strategy, this is a strategy for the opportunity to preserve and protect and extend liberty. Always identify the actions of this government and its status premises with the present administration. You should always say, this is his problem, we're looking for him to solve it. Don't take responsibility. Let everybody know this is the status program, this is Keynesian, and you should do that. Number two, as the failures begin to appear, and they will, identify the effects of the status cost. In other words, as Chrysler Corporation and General Motors Corporation begin to have their problems, and they're going to. And already, we were at the table tonight, Wall Street Journal reported that the state of Indiana is bringing lawsuit because they invested, their pension funds invested in all these bonds. Okay? And the bonds are going south because of the actions of the state. You have to identify the state as being the cause. Okay? Number three, develop libertarian explanations and solutions that are simple and easy to explain to the public. In other words, the more complex the case, the harder it will be to get across. So as the state begins to fail, as this structure begins to fail, those will be the three things. And finally, look for the coming disillusionment on the left with the failures of its own making. St. Thomas Aquinas had a very interesting phrase. He says, joy is in the expectation, and disappointment is in the fulfillment. We are going to see a disillusionment on the left as things don't work. Okay? They're not going to work. Okay? I guess you agree with me on that. I used to be able to get the road to serve to the high school students. When I was at Walsh, we tried to do it, and my graduate students could not read the road to serve. And we had to give them the comic book. There was a comic book written about it. And our biggest problem is that, you know, they can read Ann Coulter and they can read this, I call them the sort of sappy type conservative books, but they can't read the classics. And now at U of T, I don't have that problem. We put them through a pretty rigorous thing. I mean, they read everything from Aristotle all the way up to Mises, Karl Marx, everything, because we want them to learn to read the classics. Our biggest problem in education is the failing educational system. I mean, you go up with a fairly complex argument, like for the gold standard or whatever else, they have to be able to read it. They have to be able to understand it. This is a major problem, okay? So I would say, if I were Obama, I would say you're going to have some kind of a system of tax credits or get the government out of education, promote homeschooling or some kind of solid educational system, okay? Number three, I would dissolve this empire. It's too expensive. We should never have gotten involved in it. I don't think we can pull out immediately, but I think there has to be a prudential withdrawal from this because we can't afford it. Okay? Those are the things I would do. Let's see.